The Coke video that we just saw earlier, it's so, you'll see these commercials, and then you'll talk about it at work or something, or you'll talk about it with your friends, and you'll say, oh, did you see that Coke commercial? Or you'll see that such and such commercial, and you're like, oh, I love it. It really makes me cry, or it gets me all soft. And some of you get all soft inside. You're like, oh, friendship. See, and they're trying to sell you Coke, right? I mean, Coca-Cola. And let's just make sure I'm talking about the right thing. And but what they're doing is they're tapping into something that's really primal, right? They're tapping into something that's really at the core and at the basics and the foundation of everybody. Like, we all understand friends and friendship, and it's the same thing they do when they do moms or dads or babies, and you kind of or people that live far away and you miss them, and you're like, oh yeah, Hallmark. And so that was a really cool marketing thing that they did. You couldn't get a Coke unless you had a friend, which is sad for some of the kids in high school, I guess. But it was really neat. And you saw all the statistics that they did afterwards, that machine sold more bottles of Coke than a normal machine, just because of the idea that was behind it. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about friendship today. We are going through the book of Philippians. We are in Philippians chapter 2. And we are going to finish up where we are left off. We are going to start at verse 19. We're going to go all the way to 30. So we're finishing chapter 2 today, which is great. That means we will finish Philippians by 2015 sometime. No, we'll go faster than that. Verse 19, going through to verse 30. Paul writes, I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon. Timothy is here in prison now with Paul. As he's writing this letter, Timothy went with Paul actually on his second missionary journey when this church in Philippi was started. So Timothy knows these people too. Paul says, that I also may be cheered when I receive news about you. I have no one else like him who will show genuine concern for your welfare. For everyone looks out for their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ, but you know that Timothy has proved himself, because as a son with his father, he has served with me in the work of the gospel. And I hope, therefore, to send him as soon as I see how things go with me. And I am confident in the Lord that I myself will come soon. But I think it's necessary to send back to you Epaphroditus, my brother, co-worker, and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger, whom you sent to take care of my needs. For he longs for all of you. He's distressed because you heard he was ill. And indeed, he was ill. He almost died. But God had mercy on him. And not only on him, but also on me, to spare me sorrow upon sorrow. Therefore, I am all the more eager to send him, so that when you see him again, you may be glad, and I may have less anxiety. So then, welcome him in the Lord with great joy, and honor people like him, because he almost died for the work of Christ. He risked his life to make up for the help that you yourselves could not give me. I was reading somewhere in some of my notes, in the Bible, there are over 100 people. There's over 100 names of people that are listed as being Paul's friend. Isn't that great? That is so cool. How cool would it have been to have Paul as your friend, to have Paul, his counsel, that you could just call him up and say, Paul, I was thinking about this, to have his advice, to have his shoulder, And in this section, Paul is talking about two of his friends. He's talking about Timothy and Epaphroditus. Both of them are staying with Paul in prison. They're having a sleepover. And they're keeping him company. And then notice in verse 25, he says about Epaphroditus, he says, this is also your brother, whom you sent to take care of my needs. So that means of the two of these guys, Epaphroditus is the one that brought this care package to Paul from their church. Timothy is Paul's friend. He's his local friend. Epaphroditus is from Philippi. So last week when we read, Paul was talking and he said that you need to shine like stars. Timothy and Epaphroditus, these guys are the stars in Paul's life. I want to show you a video of another star. This is a high school track meet.
Goes in first at 34 and Versailles at 33. So I don't know if they hadn't added a long jump in yet, or a great display of sportsmanship.
Look at
here.
this.
I know both these runners are just worn out.
What a great display, as Joe said. Arden McMath cramping up in the legs, very obviously has gone to the track a couple times, and she's going to get helped across to finish a standing ovation here in Columbus.
And everyone in the whole place is on their feet. That was a tremendous display of sportsmanship. It's a really hot day out there, and that 3,200 is a really tough race.
Megan Vogel of West Liberty really showing what teamwork is all about, helping someone who isn't even on our team. What an inspiring finish to your race. What was in your mind as you were coming in that last stretch?
I figured I already ran my PR in the mile, so it didn't really matter how I finished in the 2 mile. That girl needed help, and I just figured I'd help her out. So that's what I did.
Well, it just seemed like instantly you saw it happen and your mind was right there, and that's fabulous. You had a standing ovation. How does that feel to end the race on that kind of note?
I wasn't really paying attention to the crowd as much. I was just kind of paying attention to the girl that, she needed help, and I just wanted to help her get across the line because she deserved it. She worked this hard to get here, so she deserved to finish, and she deserved to finish ahead of me, so.
And I saw you even put her ahead of you. What an honorable thing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Megan, thank you so much.
I was watching some of the other interviews, and Megan was saying, that girl there, so the girl ahead of her that was winning the race, Megan was coming the corner. The other girl was already almost half that little stretch between the corner and where she was ahead of her. So Megan, in her mind, had already come to grips with the fact that I am coming in second. Like, that was fine for her. She just understood that. And so as she's coming around, she sees the girl that had already ran ahead of her, was clearly going to come in first. Her leg cramped up, and she buckled, and she just fell, and she couldn't even stand anymore. And so when Megan came up on her, her first impulse wasn't, now's my chance, I can win, right? She picked her up, and then she carried her across the finish line, and she made sure that the other girl came in first because that's what she had earned, and she wanted to make sure that she got that. And that's just such a great example of what we're talking about today. Ecclesiastes 4, King Solomon writes these words. He says, 2 are better than 1. And if one falls down, his friend can help him. But pity the one who falls and has no one to help them up. Life is going to knock you down. Not maybe, it will. And people fall. It happens. That's life. But how wonderful it is to have people that surround you, people that visit you, people that pray for you, people that go out of their way to do all those little things for you, and how encouraging it is to have somebody that's willing to pick you up, dust you off, and carry you across the finish line. And in this passage today, Paul is showing us what it means to be a good and compassionate friend. Ironically, he has 2 friends, Timothy and Epaphroditus, but this is more about Paul's reaction to them and how Paul is a good friend. And the first quality we see is Paul shows genuine interest in others. Genuine interest. What we need to do is show that genuine interest in other people's lives. In verse 19, Paul says, I hope in the Lord to send Timothy to you soon, that I also may be cheered when I receive news about you. Remember, Paul's a missionary, right? He's been all over this area of the world. I don't know if you've ever received a missionary letter from a missionary. Usually it's like a high school kid or something, and they're going on a trip. They send you a letter in the mail, and you get it, and they're explaining what church they're going with, and they're telling you the dates that they're going to be gone, and they're saying, we can certainly use your prayers, but then they also say, we could certainly use your money too. It would be nice if you would help me go. That's not what we read in this letter, though, is it? In Philippians, Paul never says, send me help, right? He never says, send me money, right? This letter that he writes is very selfless. And here we're reading a letter from prison, where the prisoner is more concerned about the needs of other people than he is his own needs. Paul says he wants to hear about their church. He wants to be cheered up with stories about how they're doing, how their church is progressing. Lou Gehrig, right? He's the first baseman for the New York Yankees. Died in 1941. He had ALS, which we now call Lou Gehrig's disease. Yeah. And at that time that he was going through this, the doctors didn't know how to treat it. This was all new. And so he was at the hospital along with a group of other guys, and they were running experiments, just trying things just to see, what would work, what would stick. Just before Lou died, he called one of his friends who was an author, and he called him on the phone, and Lou said, Bob, I've got great news. The guys in the lab, they've come up with this new antidote, and they've given it to 10 of us, and it seems to be working on most of us. And his friend said, is it working on you? And Lou said, well, no, but 9 out of 10, those are great odds, right? Lou Gehrig was the 1% of people that it didn't work on. But he was still joyful because there were 9 other men who are responding well to this. I was looking up some of the things that people have said about Lou Gehrig, and there's all these quotes about just the man that he was. One sports writer said, his greatest record doesn't show in any sports book. Lou Gehrig could be counted on. He was there every day at the ballpark, bending his back and ready to break his neck to win for his side. He was there day after day, year after year. He never sulked or whined or went off in a huff. He was the answer to every manager's dream. And his wife, Eleanor, she said, I would not have traded 2 minutes of joy or grief with that man for 2 decades of anything with any other. And we see that same attitude here with Paul, don't we? A few weeks ago, Paul said, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. In humility, consider others better than yourself. Each of you should not only look to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. And I've raised that question in church before. Why do we come here? There has to be a reason that you come to church. Or there has to be a reason that you've given up sleep, or the first couple minutes of the football game, which you will miss. I guarantee it. No, I'm kidding. You're like, nuh-uh, I'm leaving now. Or you've given up a sunny day to play golf. It's tradition. It's just what good people do. You just had a bad week and you need to pick me up. You like the music, you like the pastor. Why do you go? One of the things on the front of your bulletin says that Walden Church, our core value is to love God and love others. It's right there on the front. And that's what we do. That's what we should be doing when we come to church. And so part of loving others is having a genuine interest in them. So when you come to church, just be on the lookout for those people who've fallen on the track. Over there's a mom. She's got her hands full. She's trying to get in the door. She's trying to herd all her kids. Help that woman out. Ask her if it's her first time here, if she needs to know where the Sunday school classes are. Introduce them to Lisa, who's upstairs. Or if you're sitting near a guest and they're here for the first time, introduce yourself. Say, hey, I'm glad you came. Let them know if there's anything that our church can do, that's why we exist in the community. If you're looking over the prayer list of those people in the bulletin, maybe a lot of them you don't even know, but you still know that they need prayer, that there's a hurt there in that family. You can always send a note, send an email, stop by and bring them cookies. Their addresses, all of that is in our photo, what's it called? Just lost my head. Our directory. So, if you can act in humility, if you can look out for others, if you can keep your eye open for other people's needs, it actually helps you. It's true. When you look out for other people's needs and you show concern for somebody else, some of that comes back to help you. And one of the ways is you forget about your own problems. You forget about your own struggles. We seldom remember that. We seldom realize that. We think that, I'm having trouble? Well, then I need to set aside some time for me, right? I need some me time. I deserve something extravagant, or I need to indulge myself or treat myself. And that's not always the answer. The Bible teaches us, and even psychologists will tell you, that the quickest way to kind of get out of your own troubles is to start looking after somebody else, to take care of them. The prophet Isaiah knew that a long time ago. Isaiah 58 says, if you spend yourself on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like the noon. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land and will strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations, and you will be called a repairer of broken walls, a restorer of streets and dwellings. Wouldn't that be a great title? People see you coming, they're like, hey, there's the repairer of broken walls. You could put that on your business card. Secondly, when you show a genuine concern for other people, you'll find that when you're in trouble, others then will be a good friend to you because you've done it for somebody else. The first thing we learn from Paul's words is that we need to cultivate this genuine interest in other people. And so the second good quality of a friend is sincere encouragement. We need to offer sincere encouragement to other people. In verse 20, Paul says of Timothy, I have no one else like him who will show genuine concern for your welfare. He said Timothy is Paul's local friend, right? Timothy is Paul's disciple. And the words like him, when he says, I have nobody else like him, that's the Greek word isopsychos, and it means equal in breath. Can you imagine saying that of somebody else, that they're of the same breath as you, that you guys share the same breath? Same breath, that's when you think about, okay, friendship, casual, intimate, that is not casual friendship. Same breath friendship. Casual is like, hey, how are you? I'm fine, how are you? I'm fine too, thank you. That's casual, right? And the truth is what? Neither of you are fine. But that's just how we talk, and so it's casual friendship. We just keep it simple. But in a deeper relationship, you share things with other people that you wouldn't normally share with others. But how many of us, though, have friendships where we could say they're same breath friendships? When you're so close to each other that you're like-minded, that you're kindred, right? That, if you do ever find those people that are same breath as you, usually if you find them, you what? You marry them, right? And so Paul says to Timothy that he's a same breath friend. And then in the next verse he says, for everyone looks out for their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. One Bible says it like this: I have no one quite like Timothy. He's loyal. He's genuinely concerned for you. Most people around here, they're only looking out for themselves with little concern for the things of Christ. But you know that Timothy is the real thing. Paul reminds his readers, don't be like the Israelites wandering in the desert, right? Grumbling about your stomach, your own felt needs. Step back. In this whole chapter, he's saying, just step back and take a bigger look at the picture and notice that there's the plight in your brother's life, there's a plight in your sister's life. Consider other people above yourself. There's a story that a Presbyterian minister tells. He had a neighbor across the street. He was trying to put up a flag on the outside of his house, one of those mounts, and he was out there with his ladder and struggling with it, and he was looking at his window, and he saw his neighbors having all this trouble, so he decides, I'm going to go help the guy. And he goes into his garage, grabs his tools, goes across the street, and he helps his neighbor put up the flagpole. And his neighbor looks down and sees all this gear, and he says, what do you make with such fancy tools? And the minister said, friends. Galatians 6:2, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you fulfill the law of Christ. 1 Thessalonians 5:11, therefore encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. We need friends like that. And we need to be friends like that. Someone who will pick you up when you're down, brush them off, hold their hand, someone who will go with them again and again and again. And the third quality of a good friend is unselfish release. Unselfish release. We need to practice that. Verse 25, Paul says, I think it's necessary to send back to you Epaphroditus, my brother, co-worker, and fellow soldier. Epaphroditus, he's also with Paul. We said that he was a member of the church in Philippi. The church in Philippi was a supporter of Paul's ministry, and so when they learned that Paul was in prison, they sent Epaphroditus from Philippi all the way to Rome to be of an assistance to him. And then in verse 26 and 27, Paul says that Epaphroditus longs for all of you. He's distressed because you heard he was ill. Indeed, he was ill. He almost died, but God had mercy on him. So Epaphroditus wasn't able to help Paul for very long. He got sick, probably the water in Rome, or the bugs floating around in the air. He got sinus congestion or something, I don't know. In fact, the Bible says he almost died. Well, the news then of Epaphroditus' illness travels all the way back to his hometown. They get stressed out because they find out Epaphroditus is sick. Then Epaphroditus finds out that now they're stressed out, and so he stresses out because he doesn't want them to stress out. Does that make sense? Okay. So notice that Paul has two house guests. He has two visitors, Timothy and Epaphroditus. Both of these men are a source of strength to him, encouragement to him. And I can't imagine that as a prisoner in Rome, he gets a lot of visitors. And now they're both going to leave. And if I were writing this letter, this is where I'd get selfish and say, I sure wish somebody would visit me. Kind of alone here in prison, right? But that's not what this prison letter says. Paul says, I'm sending Epaphroditus back to you. I want you to welcome him, and I want you to encourage him because he almost died for the cause of Christ. And the bottom line is, your friends aren't your friends until you're ready to let go of them. Sometimes friends can be a little bit smothering, can't they? They never leave you alone. It's like the country song, how can I miss you if you never leave? Right? We do this when we date sometimes, especially when we date in high school. We get all excited about the new boy or the new girl, and then we just latch onto them like a deer tick and we won't let go. And then we're surprised when they're like, I can't stand you anymore. Or you're like, why'd you say I was smothering? I know you didn't say that. You wrote it in your diary, but why did you say that? Do you know who experiences unselfish release the hardest? Parents, right? The words letting go. Those are the most painful words in a parent's vocabulary. In 1 minute, they're a cute little adorable, helpless little bundle. Then 18 years go by in a flash. It's filled with mommy and me classes and gymboree and little league and ballet and drama club and summer camp and family vacation and soccer, team, piano lessons, science competitions. Then you got your SAT prep. Then you got to go to all your college visits. Then they graduate. The parents who have the hardest time letting go, now in circles, we call them the helicopter parents because they're hover, right? And the kids go, I think it'd be a good idea if I went to college in Florida. And the parents are like, oh, that sounds nice. I'll go with you. Richard Bach, he's the guy that wrote that book in high school that you had to read, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. He's the one that said that if you love something, set it free. And if it comes back to you, it's yours. And if it doesn't, it never was. Paul loved Timothy and Epaphroditus so much, he was willing to let them both go. Timothy was his best friend. Epaphroditus was from his home church. And all Paul has now to look forward to in life is more prison and death. And when Timothy leaves Paul, then Paul starts writing letters to Timothy, right? We have those letters in the Bible. And in those books, Paul tells Timothy, don't worry about me. I still have friends that come by. Paul lists people like Demas and Chrysos and Titus and Luke, people who still continually come by. And I think that Paul wasn't worried about having that unselfish release with his friends. I don't think he was worried about latching onto people so tightly because he knew I can send these brothers on, and I have been the kind of friend to other people that I know none of my friends are going to let me rot here in jail. And that's pretty much what happened. Paul says to the church, welcome him in the Lord with great joy and honor people like him. We said that the book of Philippians has this whole theme of joy. The word joy is mentioned 17 times in the Bible, or in this book. And here at the close of chapter 2, Paul gives us this example of what it means to be this joy-filled friend. Paul's in jail, his friends are leaving, and who's the joyful one? Paul. He's like sending him on, and he says, when this man comes home, receive him with joy, honor him. It's such a stark contrast from who the world says we should honor today, right? Who does the red carpet roll out for now? Well, the rich, the famous, the intelligent, the beautiful. Paul says we should honor those who give themselves for the kingdom of God. And today, right now, like as we speak, two of our own are going off to El Salvador. We have Brian Richards and Joe De Los Santos. They've both left for El Salvador to go team with Living Water International, and they're going to build a well for a week. They're going to bring water to people that don't have water. And this is what it means to go through this circle, to be a disciple, And if you've ever wondered, okay, how do you get on that road of discipleship, or how do you make progress in your faith? There's actually a shape. There's actually a shape to discipleship. It looks like this. It begins with membership, moves to maturity, goes to ministry, and then it reaches out through mission. And maybe you've accepted Jesus Christ as your Savior, but now what? You don't know where to go. Is there more to this? What's next? Or you've been a Christian all your life, and you've gone to church all your life, and every Sunday, though, is kind of the same. They're all like each other. And is there a goal here? Where's the next marker? People talk about growing in their faith. Well, how do you do that? People talk about their walk in Christ. Where's this path? Each of you could see yourself somewhere on that. You're either at membership or at maturity or at ministry or at mission. And wherever you are, it also kind of tells you where you should be going. There's motion to this. No one's done. No one's arrived. We all have a next step. And I didn't make these up either. All of these steps come from the foremost crucial place that Jesus ever spoke with his disciples. I mean, think of it. You could think of it like a baseball diamond. Baseball's still going on, you guys. It's not over. The Dodgers are still in it. All right. So I'm from California, for those of you who don't know. You start at home plate, but the goal is to go to first base, right? Everybody needs to run the course and to score, right? Everybody needs a win in their life and to have a finish line. Membership comes from Matthew 4:19. Jesus tells his disciples, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men," right? When Jesus first meets his disciples, it's one-on-one. And over time, he steps into their world, and he invites them to join him. And all has to begin somewhere for people. And in a local church, it starts with membership. At first base, we have a membership class. This is where you'll learn all the foundational stuff, like what it means to join a church, what our church believes, what we talk about, all the church words like baptism and communion and tithing. We lay it all out. And yes, membership is important. Do you know there's over 30 verses in the Bible that you can't even obey unless you're a member of a local church? And then you pass first base because you hit it off in a good location and you're still running and they haven't caught it yet. You're heading over to second base, which is maturity. When Jesus prays in the garden, you have the same situation as Paul. Jesus is going to face the cross any day. And rather than pray about his own needs or his own interests, he prays for his disciples. He says, "Father, I want those you have given me to be with me where I am and to see my glory." That's what Jesus wants of all of us. A person who grows closer to Christ, a person who stands where Christ stands, so close that you see just the glory of God radiating off of him. After you take the membership class, we have a maturity class. And in that class, you're going to find all the tools you'll need to discover how to walk closer with God. If you take this class and you accidentally landed on a deserted island and you were all by yourself, you would still know all the necessities you need to continue in your faith. You would learn all your spiritual habits like how to study the Bible, how to pray, having a quiet time. We talk about giving again. And then you would round and you go to third base, which is ministry. Jesus said to his disciples, "Remain in me and I will remain in you." And so often when we ask people to serve or to give of their time or to find a ministry, the bottom line is you will never have the strength to serve other people if first Christ is not within you to give you the strength. And maybe you're like me, and you sit here in church, and you kind of look around, and you see all these things, and you're like, "Oh, the church needs to do this. Oh, the church needs to, I should write this down. I should tell the pastor. We got to have one of these." And you think about all the things that we could do or could be doing. That's good. That means you have a mind for ministry. In the third class, you begin to see how God has specifically molded you and shaped you and used all of the things that make you you to serve. Things like your heart, your abilities, your personalities, your experiences, all those things come together. God has made you a specific way, and there is a specific way that you can plug in and serve in church. And lastly, mission. Jesus says in Matthew 16, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must first turn from selfish ways, take up your cross, and follow me." And I am always hugely struck by how different Christ's opening and closing calls are to his disciples. I mean, first, he comes up to them casual while they're fishing on the beach, and he says, come and see. And then at the end of his ministry, he says, come and die. That's the path of the disciple, moving from one point to the next. And in the remaining class, we help you discover your life's mission, how to share God with the world, and ultimately what you're doing is you're coming full circle, because now as you begin to serve the world, you begin to find people that need to be members and to join the kingdom. And the key word in all of those statements, the key word in all of those things is me, right? For the disciple, it's all about Jesus. We follow Jesus, we join Jesus, we grow in Jesus, we serve Jesus. Jesus told us exactly how to serve him. And it's not surprising. Paul says the exact same thing. We serve God through humility and through serving other people. Matthew 25, and I'll close with this. Jesus says, "I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. And the righteous will say to him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see a stranger and invite them in, or needed clothes and clothe them? When did we see you sick or in prison and go and visit you? And the king will say, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did also for me. Please pray with me.